Thank you for dialing in today, and I appreciate you joining us, Nathan, today for the first cast that I have from a business spotlight interview. And I wanted to welcome you, but I wanted to have you first. I want to thank you for serving our country. I understand you're a veteran-owned business, and I wanted to thank you for serving our country. Maybe tell us a little bit about your military background, and then from there, tell us a little bit about yourself and your business before we
Sure,
start.
yeah. Not a problem. I appreciate you having me on, to talk about a little bit of the stuff and doing the introduction for me. So yeah, I served a little bit over 20 years and some change. I just say a little bit of change because I had to do what they call the high three. So I got promoted a certain rank. I needed to stay just a little bit longer. It wasn't too bad. But so yep, I retired officially in 2020. So came in right before 9/11, shortly before that, and then the 9/11 happened, and I found myself in Afghanistan shortly after. So I spent a majority of my time, about 13 years and some change, inside special operations and doing stuff with those guys, and then spent some time in the conventional forces. So I was pretty lucky, being able to have those opportunities afforded to me as far as being in certain places. Again, when everything was going on, I did not think it was that fortunate, especially being deployed to Afghanistan during the initial push, coming home for about 3 weeks for my first son to be born, and then going to Iraq right after that for a year. So being away is something I'm very accustomed to. My family is accustomed to it for the most part. So being a business owner, an entrepreneur, you do spend a lot of waking hours, maybe not at your house, right? Or even if you're at home, sometimes you're not physically there, or you're physically there but not mentally there. So you have to have a good, strong support structure at the home as well as anything else. And so I'm pretty fortunate to already kind of had that before we kind of started deciding what I was going to do when I grew up, which was meant when I retired out of the military. So
Great. Well, tell us the name of your company and tell us about your company.
okay, yeah. So we are a local property management company here in the St. Louis area. Our office is located in St. Peters. So we operate in St. Louis City, St. Louis County, everywhere out in St. Louis. Farthest south we'll go is about South St. Louis and Fenton area. And then anything in St. Charles County. We're technically trying to go ahead and start branching out into Lincoln County once we have logistics in place.
Gotcha. So what made you decide to get into the real estate management and real estate business?
I mean, just like anything else, I was just trying to figure out what I was going to do. And, I picked up the most common book that most people are probably read is Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? I'm sure you'll probably hear that 1,000 times, or if you met anybody that did anything in some type of real estate or some type of business, really, one of those books will pop up. So that was just something I picked up when I was, again, in Afghanistan, and just had some time, and it just kind of made me think. I mean, I was already in over 12 years in the military, and I needed to go back to school, finish my degree, and I just picked that up and had to figure it out. Real estate was just kind of like a byproduct, because again, when I was stationed in Hawaii, I went to a conventional unit, so I wasn't gone all the time. I had a lot of time on my hands, so I was finishing my degree, but again, still had way more time on my hands than I was very much accustomed to, right? So being in the Army, going to college online, I still had all this time, so I was trying to figure out ways to self-educate myself. And real estate is just a good, strong investment vehicle, right? There's tons of ways that you can invest for the long term, make capital gains on your money, right? Real estate is just something that has been tried and true for a very, very long time, right? I know things are cyclical, but I mean, they are not going to build any more land, right? Right now, we're in a type of economy where they can just print off money, right? So it doesn't really count for anything. But buildings and structures and land, I mean, there's only so much around. So I think it's just a staple, something that's going to be good. So it was just part of our journey as far as figuring out, right? We wanted to do rentals, but you got to kind of have capital to do rentals, and then we just kind of fell in flipping real estate and doing that, flipping houses, and then just property management and managing rental properties kind of goes hands in hand. I mean, it's kind of like a base fundamental that touches a lot of aspects of real estate in general, like the buying, the selling, the maintenance, the rehab, right? The management. So you can do a lot by having, I think that property management is a good base. And a buddy of mine, actually, I met him at Bragg, and that's exactly what he did. I never created this kind of, I'm not recreating the wheel, right? I seen how it could be used and leveraged and done correctly. You can branch off and have multiple different businesses inside one business, right? So
Well, it's not easy. There's a lot of people who are amateurs who do not do a very good job at that. So I admire everything that you've done so far in a very short period of time. And I would tell you, you probably meet a lot of people who have went out there and bought one or two and said, this is too hard for me. Could you please take this and manage this for me and make it better and make it more profitable? So I'm sure you've seen all of those and you've benefited from that. And the management of it. Those who want to be real estate investors, but those who do not want to be real estate managers of those investments.
Well, it's funny that when we do get calls like that, right? Like they have one property, I will tell them like, hey, why don't you manage it yourself? Just see what you like and what you don't like. And sometimes they're like, really? I'm like, I would love to earn your business, but I think, me being honest with you right now, like you're kind of unsure, you don't know how property management works, like there are fees for us to do things. You may not even think that what we are charging based off of like, services we provide, you may not think it's like of fair value. So I always tell people like, yeah, maybe you should just manage it yourself. Like
Right.
just, I try to tell them, so then you can see if you really like it or not. And there's some people that, they're good at it, or, they like to manage it, but they get up to 3 or 4 properties. And then now it's like, okay, now I don't have enough bandwidth to do this. Cause it's always the ones that have like 3 or 4 properties, everything is really going great. And then they get one bad tenant. Like
Right.
we have it to where, people have 5 or 6 properties, but they only want us to manage 2 of the properties. And that's fine. Like, okay, we're helping them. We're trying to be a value add. We would love to manage everyone's whole portfolio, but if there's things that are problems, we want to be looked at as like, we're going to solve your issues. We're here to assist you. Then like, we'll earn the rest of your portfolio, right? If we can manage things that have been a drain on your time, drain on your energy, right? And kind of get that off and help clients buy back some time. I think it just pays dividend down the way, right? Because then they're like, well, these guys did such a great job with my headache properties. Let's just let me give them the rest of the portfolio. Now I get a lot more time back. You know what I mean?
Excellent. So you've been in business for a short period of time. You've grown fast. And how many employees do you have today? Partners that you.
Let's see. I mean, so there's 3 office staff, right? And then we have 5 remote.
Okay.
So, the average property management company, the standard is, you have 1 manager, right? Ish type person for 75 units. Looking at that model and seeing it from the inside out prior to even starting this, that was a very wrong number, right? And that's a big problem with property managers. Get a bad rap because they hire like 2 or 3 people and they want them to manage a portfolio of like 200. There's no way you can be efficient, right? That's the biggest thing. It's like communication is like the biggest like problem when owners come to us. Communication, mismanagement, they have no idea of what's going on with the property when they're reaching out to the owners are reaching out. So that's the biggest thing. So again, I'm fortunate enough to have, my military retirement and everything else and things that, I invested in prior to me retiring. So when I started this business, I didn't really require to get a paycheck. You know what I mean?
Right.
Right. And now I started paying myself last year. So 18 months, my CPA says you need to pay yourself. Right. So I'm like, okay, well, I know the IRS is not going to ticket me. So I'm going to get 30 grand. That's it. Right. So again, I was able to do it, still put in, 80, 100 hours a week, but knowing that, the money is being invested on systems and processes and team members, right? Because I think if you build it and then you have the customer service, everything will ebb and flow, right? I mean, the military taught us, 2 is 1 and 1 is none, right? Meaning, if you have a radio, you better have 2 sets of batteries, right? Because you never know. It's the same, the old saying, right? The old adage is just doesn't work out. So if you,
right.
And then you can streamline your process and you can kind of thin it. So like, I mean, we broke our stuff down to where like, we have everyone again comes up that gets hired on, everyone starts with the same thing. We call it like skill level 10, right? You're going to have to learn all this before you can kind of move along move along stuff. Like today was one of our newer team members, Austin. It was kind of his phase 2 of learning, because I guess he was doing all like the initial checking properties, kind of learning how the Regus scope of work and do. So today was him following me, doing a move out inspection according to our checklist, doing a move in with a live resident moving in today, right? And then the second one that we had today, he did it, but I was there, right? And then of course made sure asked the follow-up questions that he didn't ask to the incoming residents. So it's a learning process that has to happen. So it's always ongoing.
Great. So a few questions that I have is, if you started from square one in business today, what would you do differently from the period of time you've been in?
I mean, knowing what I know now, or just in general?
Just knowing what you know today. I mean, if you were able to go back and rewind the tape and knowing what you know today, how would you use it?
I don't think I probably would have done very much different, than maybe minute things, but I know my wife would want me to do things different, right?
Okay.
The reason why is just because, again, we were in a franchise, a franchise business, which is good, right? There's always pros and cons to everything you do, right? You have to make that decision. So I knew that, kind of being in a franchise, you're gonna pay the royalties, which is not a bad thing, right? My wife just doesn't feel, her opinion is that we're not getting the value from them with what they're getting from us, which is fine.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe just hiring somebody a little bit sooner has always been like the first thing. Like I think bringing in somebody, maybe not remote, because I went with somebody remote. I probably should have brought in somebody in the office. This team member faster. I mean, you need to bring in somebody, right, to kind of offload some of those like primary tasks that you hear all the time that you want to do that, or you're not very good at, to find somebody who's your yin and yin and yang type deal. But
Right.
maybe just a little bit sooner, what I mean? Just a little bit sooner.
You're talking about your staff growing. What positive qualities, or what qualities do you look for in employees, and how do you foster the positive and productive work environment?
So the most of the time, like I send out a DISC assessment or a culture index. That's like first one. If they don't answer it, then they're not the right fit. That's it. Like, it's just, hey, here you go. You want some information? Here is these 2 links. Do one of the 2 tests and send me back. Like if there's like a block of instructions, like, download your sheet and please send me a resume, right? That's like step 1, like following basic instructions. If they can't do that, that means they're untrainable, they're uncoachable, they're unwilling to kind of follow instructions, and then that's it. Like they can have the best resume in the world, right? But that's what I look at, because I've already looked at their resume, right?
Right.
Just want to see if they're willing to be like, okay, maybe he didn't get it right. Just it's simple. It's not, you know what I mean?
Right.
Because I look for everyone to end up being in charge or managing other people, right? So they're going to kind of expect that stuff. But that's usually it. And then time management and organization, right? Because in property management, I tell everybody we bring on is like, hey, it's the same stuff but different every day, and it doesn't really click until they are actually starting to do stuff, because it's the same stuff but it's different every day, because something happens throughout the day. That's part of property management, right? That didn't happen this week, or but it happened before, right? Or it's a little bit of a difference that happened.
Right.
So same stuff, but different every day.
So what do you attribute your growth to your growth that you've had? You started fairly, your business has not been in business very long, and it sounds to me like you started right around COVID, right? Which was when you retired out of the military. You kind of started in COVID, and it wasn't a really good time to start, but people still have to live somewhere, and you had to deal with all that. So how do you really attribute your success? I know you've got a franchise, but that doesn't mean success. There's someone back there driving the ship at a local level.
Yeah.
Tell me, how do you attribute that growth to?
I'm just super hard-headed, I guess. I mean, that's what anybody that really knows me knows, that I'm very stubborn. Like I'll figure
persistence.
Yeah, okay. Some people you'll use the word persistence and get grit and determination. I'm just going to be honest. I'm just hard-headed, right? That kind of all factors into the same thing, because I think everything to its core you can figure out, right? It just matters like how much do you care about figuring the problem set out, right? Again, in the military, it just says it'll buff. That's all we always say. If there's a problem, it's going to buff. Meaning it just depends on how much brain power or physical, you know, power you're gonna have to put into it, but everything is a problem set can be solved, right? It just depends on how you're gonna solve it. So I mean, we have that, and just like I said, it's just, just I gotta figure it out. Like I did not go into this whole thing not knowing it would be a challenge, right? I mean, we've done real estate in other states, right? By far, St. Louis market is by far a little bit more difficult because of the rules and the inspections, and not all municipalities follow the standard and the code book across all 48 lower states, right? Every municipality has a little bit something different, but I've noticed over the last 3 years they're kind of consolidating that because if you're starting, you can't just decide. Jennings can't just do something totally different than what Ferguson is doing, or St. Charles County, right? Like you got St. Charles County unincorporated, you got old St. Charles County, and then you got St. Charles County. Like they got to get on the same page, on the same stuff. So it's coming around. So by, just from the states we've done real estate in, just in the St. Louis proper area, it's like you have to know, and you have to have cheat sheets, and you have to have good rapport with inspectors, right? That you're going to do the right thing. You're not going to cut corners. And that's the biggest thing. Like, hey, and then if you're going to say you're going to do something, your team's going to say they're going to do something, you guys better do it, because inspectors are going to remember that, right? Like, especially like, you're going to go and fix it. You need to fix it right.
Yeah. Now, were you originally from the St. Louis area, or did you move here?
No, yeah, my wife was from here. She grew up in Florissant area, and then when I retired, we came back here.
Yeah, so I had 6 rental properties in different areas. We'll talk about that over coffee sometime. But when I first moved here in 2004, I read, because I was from Indianapolis, which did Unigov back in the 70s, which means I think there's like 6 municipalities there. At that time in St. Louis County, there was 94 in St. Louis County at that time. I did find out that places like Hazelwood's inspectors were doing some of the other smaller municipalities. So there becomes some consistency, but it was crazy. You're in a 5-block square, and then literally across the street, they're inspecting it differently. So you've got a lot of moxie.
Right. And there's still places where you have to physically go and do, you have to go file for the inspection at the office. Like, I mean, Bell Fountain's the same way. Pine Lawn, like these places, like you can get it, you can download the inspection sheet, you can do the application, but you have to physically go down there, turn it in, and pay when you're over there. I'm just like, okay, well, I mean, it's 2023. Like you should have some type of like technology for, I mean, I get it. They're doing that, and it's just very strange sometimes, you know what I mean? But it is what it is, and you just have to do what you have to do. Same thing with the permits in Hazelwood. You still have to go down and physically provide them a permit, application. Even a permit for a dumpster, even if you park it in a driveway that's considered private property, you still have to go down there and pull a permit, which I think is ridiculous. But
everybody would like to have their money.
Yeah, that's what I equate it to.
Great. Well, tell me a little bit about the learnings from being an employer. You went from the military to being an employer, and it sounds to me like you grew employees pretty quick. You talked about having an employee remotely, and then you wanted someone in the office quicker, but you have now, a handful of employees that you've, grown pretty quickly. Tell me a little bit about what's your key learnings from being an employer that you could share with others.
I mean, the only really big difference that I still have to work on it every day, right? My wife helps me work on it, that I have to remind her that she has to remind me, and I have to remind myself that I'm not in the military anymore, right? That sometimes the drive for people that you hire or bring on your team, right, is never going to be the same as yours, right? So you have to understand that, right? So you have to figure out, when you bring on somebody onto your team, like what motivates them, right? Is it money? Is it responsibility? Is it recognition? Is it power? Something, right? And then you just have to find out how you can motivate those people. Let's say, I mean, to be honest, like we've gone through, I've hired and fired people. I mean, I've fired, just let somebody go this week, right? It just, they weren't a fit. Like we've given them times, I give them multiple opportunities to fix their issues and stuff like that. But again, there's only so many times that you can let people fall by the wayside or not pull their own weight, but you just have to let them go, because now there's just a liability, right? So systems and processes and documenting everything you're doing, right? That is what you have to do. From the most minute tasks by like receiving information for a property, documenting like key aspects, putting the keys in a lockbox, tagging the keys, right? Very simple task. Like document your process, whether it's like literally if you're starting to bring on people, right? Before you think about doing it, like what you do when you first thing when you walk into the office, right? You turn on the lights, we check for this, we check for that. You know what I mean? Make sure the printer is powered up, because the printer, if it goes off, right? You have just everything that you're doing, like that you mentally that you do on muscle memory, because you're building a business yourself, right? You and your wife or your spouse or whoever are in this thing together, and just the things you do. When you start bringing on people, you need to have a checklist. Like, here's how we do it, because explaining it to some people, they can do that. People are visual learners, people are readers. So if you have a checklist, that's the easiest thing, that they can read it, watch you do it, and then they have something to go off of to ask you questions. So documentation is key.
When you're managing 75 properties per person, you better have the right keys to the right property, right?
Well, that's the main thing. Like I said, if that is the industry standard, is 75 per individual, that is pretty crazy. There's a lot of, I mean, you burn people out, right? There's a lot of stuff that happens,
Right. So we got one more question, if you don't mind, and I know
Of
we're tight
course.
on time here. Afternoon. How do you balance your personal life with the demands of running your business? You refer a lot to your wife. How do you balance that to make sure that you're not burning that at both ends with you and your family? How do you
I
balance that?
I would be honest, it's just a personal thing. I mean, there is no balance. I know people
Okay.
strive for that. I mean, I'm just being very honest about it. Like, I don't think for me there's ever a balance. I guess maybe it's just because, I mean, I came up this, last 20, majority of my adult life was in the military, right? There was things going on that I would have rather been at home with my family with these things, but there was something else, and they understood that. So it's kind of the same thing in a different sense. But I mean, yes, you do have to balance out your stuff. Whenever our youngest son is starting to play football, and my wife's like, "You're going to help coach," and he's, it's a Troy Junior League, right? So guess what? He's got practice twice a week, so that means I have to figure out to manage my schedule to make sure I'm home in time to take him and help coach practice. So those are sacrifices, but with that sacrifice means that I may have to work on the weekend to make up some hours at home or in the office. Again, so it's a
Yeah.
dual sacrifice with my wife and my family. But no, I
All
mean,
right.
the key level is to get balance. But I think if you're, again, my personal opinion, I know people have kind of figured this out, but again, I mean, depends on how involved you're at. But I mean, everybody wants balance, but it just depends on what you consider to be balance. I mean, you should have some time off for sure. Like, there's nothing out here in the world that's more important to your family, but I mean, there has to be some balance. But right now I'm at like 90-10, 80-20. So, you know what I mean?
Perfect. So on your discs, glad to hear that you use that. So may I ask you what your disc profile is?
Oh,
I think
it's an A, yeah, I'm an A personality type, like, you know what I mean? I'm very,
probably
yeah,
an ID.
very direct, I don't mean to, like, I try not to, it's just the way I came up, right, through the military. I mean, I fit into a certain kind of pool being in the army to begin with, right? And then you kind of whittle it down, and then you start doing some specialized things, and you kind of whittle that down. Um, so yes, I mean, I just want to, I'm very direct. I want to kind of get stuff done. I want to, I will keep going. And that's kind of like the downfall is like, hey, I will do it and then show you how to do it. Or I'll show you later, but keep up type of thing. So I have to remember that, I still have people that don't know as much, and I have to like take back and like train them and like, hey, remind them. So I'm in that category. And you know what I mean? I'm one of those guys that just kind of do it. Just got to get it done and move on to the next thing.
Great. We shared a lot about yourself and your business, and we thank you for serving our country. And the last thing I would ask you is, there's a lot of property management companies that are out there, and I've had my experience with not very good ones. So I would let you finish up, because we're going to let you use the videos and do different things with them. And those who are going to look as investors that need a property management company, give us your elevator pitch. Tell us why give the name of your company, and why someone would come and do business with you, and why you're a good property management company they should consider.
Oh, I think it's 100%. It's just being transparent with everything. Again, just by our website, right? We put our pricing, 90% of our pricing on our website because we understand a consumer, a client, a customer, right? They're going to want to see it. I value their time, right? I am not going to put something like, oh, introductory, like here is what we're going to charge. You
Right.
could make a decision as a consumer if this is going to fit for you, because sometimes it's not, right? The deal doesn't work out. And to hire a property manager what we're charging. Then I tell them we're not the most expensive out there, right? We're pretty competitive with our pricing. And I think the things that we offer for clients, right, are kind of level that, we invest in real estate as well, right? The people that we hire in-house, they have skill sets, with construction and rehab, licensed agents that are skilled in that area. And it's, we're going to provide you the real feedback. Sometimes owners don't like to hear what we have to tell them, like, hey, you have problems with your property. They were mismanaged, or you got these things. And sometimes owners don't want to hear that, but we'll be honest with them. Like, this is not a good deal. Like, you probably need to get this thing together and you probably need to offload it. Yes, we may lose managing 1 or 2 year properties, but it's causing you to, to hemorrhage cash, and the other thing too, especially for these other places, in like, Baldwin and all these other areas where they're buying kind of like in these nicer areas, they're like, well, hey, how do you feel about managing? And it's like, well, we manage stuff in the city, right? We have no issues managing in the city, Section 8, other type of rental assistance. Managing in St. Charles County and Baldwin and Kirkwood and some of these other places, I tell them it's a cakewalk. You know what I mean? Because we deal with a lot of different things that happen in and around the city, older buildings, different rules, stuff like that. And,
Right.
all the other places is way easier to manage. Like the rules are established a little bit easier. You get a little bit of better tenant sometimes, not always. We've got some tenants that are lawyers and doctors, and they don't pay their rent on time too. Right. So I tell people all the time, it's literally about how you kind of just get it started and make sure you kind of set, that we let residents know that, hey, we are representing our client. Like,
Right.
we are there for a reason. Like, you didn't pay rent. We understand, hey, that's horrible. We understand you have something going on. I said, but hey, you got to pay rent because this is the contract you signed. You know what I mean? Because again, we can be that, the mean person for the owner because they don't want to do that because they get the sob stories, right? Or 2, they just don't want to deal with their portfolio anymore.
Right.
So
I did see your website. I saw the different tiers that you have. You can have I don't want to put words in your mouth, like a basic all the way to a fully.
yeah,
And
again, we invest in real estate, and I can see that everything, you just don't want to have one, like, because there's different things that people want, right? And you don't, again, as a business owner, you want to be able to say, okay, what is the standard? What can we be better at that we should be charging a little bit more, right? And then, everything that you do in there has to be a value add for your client, right? You're providing them value at the end of the day. Like, when we bring on new clients, we do a full, what we call property assessment, meaning myself or my guy Joe is going to walk through the property and look at everything. We're looking for any safety violations, do the current code right now, anything that's a health and welfare inspection. We talk to the tenants, kind of see what their needs and wants are, right? And then we send our owners a report, like, when it's videos, it's photos, it's like everything. Here you go. This is what, if you were paying us, it's not an inspection. We tell them it's not an inspection. It is an assessment. Right. I'm not taking the Missouri, St. Louis inspection test, right? I'm done taking tests in my life, right? So we want to provide them value. We want it to be where they don't have to ever kind of look at their property or have to worry about it. I mean, we have clients that own property in St. Louis. They live here and they haven't seen their properties in over 3 years, other than the photos that and videos we provide for them.
Okay.
So that's what we want to do. We want to be able to take off that load for people.
Yeah, and I saw that on your site where you do a video walkthrough initially, and you do a video walkthrough at the move out. So
yep, so we do the video walkthroughs and stuff like that. It just really depends. They're gonna, at least at a bare minimum, they're gonna get photos of everything, all the rooms, everything that was in it, right? And it's really just the inspection. If there's any issues or anything, we find, videos, or like if there's like, hey, we have to show this in real time.
Great. Well, I thank you very much for your time. Thank you for sharing. And I will tell you once again, thank you. My dad was a veteran, and I thank you very much for your service to our country. And I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful week and a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You have a great day.
You as well.